Where there are tabletop games, there are tabletop players, tabletop GMs, and of course, tabletop content creators. Some big, some small, some that do very different things. Some are doing whole charity work pieces through the medium of TTRPGs. Some are making content for you to enjoy, be entertained by, be educated by, and some of the biggest names in the group, you know, like Matt Colville, Matt Mercer, Critical Role, that kind of thing, they're making stuff for us to enjoy. And, you know, through all these things, there are those that also contribute to the TTRPG space by creating more TTRPGs, like, you know, Daggerheart, for example. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Daggerheart. And I was picking what form, when to talk about Daggerheart, because I didn't know if I wanted to make an entire video dedicated to it, or just kind of mention it in passing with another video, like put it into like a category video. Who knows? But I thought, considering I've been waiting to get a physical copy for ages, because I wasn't one of the ones that, you know, because I'm not big enough in the TTRPG community or on YouTube, I wasn't warranted the sort of packets that they gave out to content creators to promote the product, so as a result I had to wait for the peasant copy, and I didn't get the first round of, you know, physical copies. I had to wait until they restocked, which took a long while, and really funny, it said, you know, oh, you'll get the stock, the Critical Role shop will be back in stock at the end of September, or like sometime in September, and of course it meant the end of September, which I managed to get. I immediately refreshing the page every single day and get a physical copy. And that leads me to today with my physical copy. So, when to talk about Daggerheart? How about when I have the physical copy right in front of me and I just need to open it? And I guess this is an unboxing video. I never thought I'd do one of those ever on this channel, but yes, I'm technically going to be unboxing this thing. Going to have a look at the physical copy because I've got PDFs of it, obviously, because I bought it online. I'm going to look at the physical copy, I'm going to talk about it, and I want to give my thoughts, both positive and negative. Because, you know, no game be perfect. Some game be perfect to some people, and those people are probably not willing to explore other TTRPGs beyond D&D. But now we talk about Daggerheart. So, let's open the box. And let's talk about it on Tabletop Tidbits. First of all, when I got it, it's incredibly heavy. Big old box, open it, and there it is. Oh god, big old box. I mean, if you buy anything else, unless you're buying like a whole big old premium set, like Mothership, for example, you're not going to get a product as weighty as this. But that's because, of course, it's not just a book, it's the lovely cards. And if we can't really hear it, kind of, yeah. Our cards wait for us on the inside. I'm going to have to get something to cut this plastic, I think. Don't mind me. There we go. There we go. There we go. Plastic unsheathed. I'll take the postage condom off. And then, there we are. Like a DVD from the oldie times. Little Blu-ray, physical copy from the shops. We peel off our sleeve. And we have two. We have our books and our cards. A wonderful little gimmick that everyone was hyped about, and I have to say, it's growing on me. I did think initially that when I saw all the whole card thing was introduced, I thought, okay, this is good as a gimmick, but at the end of the day, it does have benefit, and I think the benefits outweigh the lack of a negative that there is. We'll get to that. Anyway, there's more plastic on the book as well. Right. There we go. Fuck. You should never double layer condoms. There we go. Bloody hell. Oh, right. Well, just as a preliminary look at this thing, very nice. Very clean copy, of course. Art looks lovely. Some shiny at the back there with all the cards. Daggerheart is a heroic fantasy tabletop role-playing game designed for narrative-driven play, punctuated by fast-paced and dynamic combat. The system's collaborative tools encourage everyone at the table to be a storyteller. Now, what do we know about Daggerheart before I even open this book? Well, from basically reading the book as a PDF, I can tell you that the whole game itself is geared towards people that want to create their own stuff, as it said there. Now, when I say that, I mean, if you have something like, I don't know, any other TTRPG you see present here, they'll normally have something to front load it. I mean, this isn't a stranger concept, and even Darrington Press knows about this with, Candela Obscura, where you make a society, you make law, and then front load that law and make the game with the law packaged in. We have Vaesen, Call of Cthulhu, all these things that have a world, D&D, Pathfinder, things that have law and the mechanics with them. Meanwhile, Daggerheart is a game that very much draws back on anything lore-wise, really, and only has a bit present. Instead, it kind of trusts you that you know fantasy, right? Probably, because you've probably heard about this game through Critical Role, or any other kind of game, and as a result, you know fantasy, you know about every fantasy book and movie that you can draw inspiration from to make stories with this game, and as a result, it's basically a lot of game mechanics. The full thing is a game mechanics and wants you to make your own game, as opposed to someone playing D&D. Like, for example, me growing up and playing 5th edition, all that kind of stuff, playing that and having other players also join me when I'd inevitably run my own games out of a lack of another GM, it would result in me picking up the books and going, oh cool, I know how to play this. But some people really like to get into the lore of D&D, and as a result, a player in my game, when I run the game, they know everything about D&D, and if I go, oh, we're going to go into the Underdark, he'll go, that's where the Drow are, and they worship Lolth, and I'm like, that's fine. This is my own setting that I'm going with, and Lolth doesn't exist, because I've told you about the existing gods that I've created, which are the only ones in the Pantheon. And they'd still come up with 2 sessions later going, so about Lolth, and I'm like, they don't exist. That's because some people really want to get into the lore of a game, some people really don't. Some people look at Critical Role, where they have the system of D&D that you've been watching on Critical Role for years at this point, and they have the story and the characters, but none of that world is entirely D&D faithful, really. A lot of it is, of course, the creativity of Matt Mercer and the people on the team. So, a game coming from those same sort of people would, of course, be like Daggerheart, where they want you, the player, the GM, to make your own game, as opposed to having to pick up the book and read up, who is this Yenogu person, this demon, whatever, to actually play the game. So, with that in mind, Daggerheart is more creative, on your side, heavy, and it gives you all the tools in order to do so. And the tools that are present are quite cool, are quite fun. I like them a lot. And it's funny that when a friend of mine, for example, who works on another TTRPG, Nimble, for example, Nimble 5e, told me about his concept, his idea to create travel and have like basically stat blocks for D&D in order to create travel stat blocks. Like instead of monsters, there were encounters to use for travel. And since him saying that, I've picked up a bunch of games and found, oh, this exists in the likes of Draw Steel, and now I've looked at Daggerheart and realised, oh yeah, this also does that, because there are a bunch of tools for you to use. And if I was to give my review on whether you should pick this up, I say, if you're a GM that loves to make your own stuff, you'll love Daggerheart, because you'll love to just pick up a rule set, give it to your players, give it to you, sit behind your screen and just run the game and get to create everything that you want, and the players look to you with the answers for what the world is, rather than being able to metagame or look up what the lore is and just making the story at the table together with your group, as opposed to, again, picking up the lore book and figuring out yourself. The tools in question that I meant, as I'm looking towards the back of the book, there we go, environment stat blocks, where of course you can look up and say, oh, what environments do we have? We have ambushes, a bustling marketplace, mountain pass, haunted city, pitched battle, that kind of thing. You can look these up, use what content it says there, how to use them, what information you can get, like war magic, if you're in a pitched battle, what might occur to the players to sort of change the situation. All very fun. Now, when I say that, and all these tools are all very fun, I do have to say that Daggerheart is a very original game. Sorry, it's a very original combination of games. Now this is going to sound like a criticism, but it's really not. When I open the beginning of this book, what do I find? I find very early on that the people who are making this game are trying to tell me, hey, here are some touchstones that inspired us to make this game. If I can try and find the pen. There we go, the second page. Touchstones, TTRPGs, and lists a whole host of them. From people that are on YouTube, or creators themselves, or big companies. We have Apocalypse World, for example. We have MCDM on there, Flea Mortals, Dishonored, from more diffuse entertainment, a whole host of stuff. And of course, it even mentions Dungeons and Dragons from Wizards of the Coast, books, films, video games, special appreciation to a bunch of specific games that inspired it. For example, 13th Age, among many other things, including Dungeons and Dragons, the Cypher system, Wild Sea, which of course is massive. People love that game. Apocalypse Keys from Evil Hat Productions, blah blah blah, all sorts of stuff, which are the touchstones. And I very much like the fact that they go on to say that these things inspired this game. I say that because I've mentioned it in this game already. I've mentioned it in this video already from reading those lists of people. When looking at their game, I did look at the sort of like inspirations or explain what the game was like page, and saw a remarkable lack of the mention of D&D, considering the very close attachment to D&D. But anyway, I appreciate that the touchstones do admire, they do tell you, that there is an inspiration from other games, other systems. And I say that because it's quite evident to see that they took a lot of some of the best features from certain games and remade them into an original frame. There are amazing things to find in this book if you want to create your own games, but also you won't find that it's too dissimilar from what you've already played before in other games to suddenly get really scared and think, oh god, how am I going to do this? Trying to explain an entirely new and completely original game when all you've played is D&D might be scary, but if you pick up something like Daggerheart, which has, of course, quite a few roots buried in the sort of appreciation for the biggest TTRPG game, then you're not going to go wrong by picking up Daggerheart and expecting something similar in those two things, even if it's a tangential bit of their DNA across the two of them. So, apart from that, and we see that like Daggerheart is, it's a wonderful combination of fantastic elements into an original package with wonderful art that you'll see throughout. I think what to talk about is, of course, character creation. Character creation, and much like a lot of this book, people kind of assumed, I think, that it was going to be rules light game. It was going to be simple game. Meanwhile, D&D, big complicated game. Pathfinder, even more complicated game. I think people kind of looked at this and heard about what Daggerheart was going to be initially and interpreted it as rules light, and it's not. It's not rules light, but it's not extremely complicated either. I think the way to sort of explain it is what I've tried to coin in my own TTRPG design is the term rules right, as opposed to rules light or rules heavy. Rules right. It's in the middle. It's got the right amount of sort of mechanics and crunch in there. And I think that's what I try to drive for as well. And I think that Daggerheart pulls it off pretty good. It's pretty good to see that it's not a game that is loaded by all these different options. And this is kind of expressed in the fact that character creation is quite simple. It's quite nice to get into. And it's much more simple, may I say, if you have the cards with you, if you're playing in person. And it's also incredibly simple if you have all the content available on Demiplane, which is, of course, where you can find the character creation tools for Daggerheart. Demiplane, if you want to know, is basically where you find stuff like character creation help and how you can find groups. You can create groups for people to play in online. It's an online D&D Beyond akin thing for those that only play D&D. It's like that, except it's for a bunch of different games. There is Cyberpunk Red, there is Pathfinder, Starfinder, there is, of course, now Daggerheart there. There's a bunch of other ones as well to look out for. And when you look at Demiplane, it'll set out character creation, and it'll give you a bunch of options, but not all of them. It'll give you a lot of them, but not all of them, which I found surprising, which is going to sound weird, because it's like, hang on, what are you talking about? D&D Beyond, when you look at those, when they first give you the free stuff you get without buying the content or that making an account, that kind of thing, it'll just be, right, he's the barbarian and one subclass. Here's the spells, but not all of them, that kind of thing. It's the same with Demiplane, which I found odd, because the core rules, the SRD, is online. You can get basically the main bulk of the game online, even all the adversaries, some like the environment, that kind of stuff, all the classes, all the cards in the reference, you can see all that. It just doesn't have the art. Meanwhile, you go on Demiplane and you can't get all of the stuff that you can get free elsewhere. You're basically just paying for the convenience of character creation online. And I did, I must admit, me saying that minor complaint is accompanied by the knowledge that, yes, I did actually pay for the extra stuff as well. So in total, I spent all the money for the physical option, its delivery, and of course, the online content as well. Because if people were wondering, Darrington Press going to do the thing that D&D never did, which is we're going to buy all these books and fill out shelves with all the books, but when I go on D&D Beyond, I still have the peasant account where I've got nothing on there. Can't I get like a code from the product and put it into... That isn't a thing either. But again, I can't sit here and say you did a terrible job by not putting this in when most things don't anyway. So, with that said, I do have the paid content for, Daggerheart, which means I can access the full suite of all the cards, all the classes, because it restricts you to 6 of the 9 classes. It takes about like a bunch of the subclasses away. You can only use like half of them, that kind of thing. But now that I have the paid stuff, I can tell you it's very fun to go on Demiplane and just go, right, let's make a character. And choose all these options and just go down a big list, and it's quite simple, quite streamlined, as opposed to something like D&D, where if you look at a character like sheet in D&D, unless you are very familiar with D&D, you probably will be sat there kind of confused as to what's going on. And those that go on D&D Beyond might still be a bit confused as to what's going on, because your character has the proficiencies, of course, the big list of all the different options and stuff. That's on the first homepage of the character creation suite. The abilities is a big long list of just stuff. The background is as full of text. Meanwhile, the Demiplane stuff is quite streamlined. You just click some options, it tells you how many choices you have left, blah, blah, blah. And so you go all the way down and you have a level 1 character and you've chose all the things. And it's very nice as well to see all the lovely art and all the cards and see all that stuff as you go down, pick your choices, and it results with your character, which you can use on Demiplane, and it works, in my opinion, about as nicely, if not maybe a bit nicer, because it just layout looks very nice and clean on Demiplane compared to D&D Beyond. So, if you have the physical stuff when playing in person, and you have the online stuff when you're playing online, you'll have a grand time. If you were like me, pre-buying the Demiplane stuff, and you thought, I want to run, because I now have the physical copy, and I've been talking about it for a while, I want to run a game of Daggerheart for my friends online, even though we're not able to get in person. And they don't have the money, or they're not going to buy the physical copy, which means that, how are we going to play? Because also, you can't find form-fillable PDF character sheets online. For example, if you play something like Call of Cthulhu, which I'm doing recently, I've made people's characters and I pulled up some character creation options and stuff. You can just go on the Chaosium website and find form-fillable PDFs, which means you can just go online, click a box, and type in the details and have it on your screen. You can't find that for Daggerheart. You can find the things to print off, but there isn't any to actually form-fillable. I found one by a creator on Reddit, and that version is a generic character sheet to fill in, but as a result, it takes away the ease of the class character sheets that are present in Daggerheart. Because if you're not aware, there are character sheets for Daggerheart for the different classes, and they have the base info that you will need to actually play the character, like your armor score. Yes? Evasion, yeah, like evasion, armor score, your armor threshold. It'll have some of these things kind of like referenced in there, I think. Off the top of my head, can't entirely say, I'm sure, but yeah, it does have the sort of starting features for the class itself, which again, you won't get any of these things if it's on a generic character sheet, which you can only really get if you print it off, play it in person, or you go online, and you either have to pay for the new stuff, or you're limited to just the stuff that you have. So, the character creation process, after saying all that, I think it's quite simple. I like that there's the 9 classes and also the circle of domains. I think that sort of format works very nicely. I like the whole crack that, like, the Guardian has, Valor and Blade, and the Warrior has Bone and Blade, so those things cross over. It's quite nice to get those. It means that you can have a party of players that can have some crossover and they can kind of work with each other, but at the end of the day, they can just look at these cards and think, right, I have all these cool things that I can pick out, and I'm going to just choose all these cards and be different characters entirely if I wanted to, because I can just lean into a subclass or a domain that you don't have. That's all very fun. In terms of character creation as well, the cards in replacement of things like going on to, for example, I'm going to keep comparing it to a thing that we all know. I always do this in videos, like D&D. If you want to play an elf, you have to look at the big long list of stuff that you get. Meanwhile, if you look at a single card in Daggerheart, they can only go up to a certain threshold of text, and they manage to get all that text onto cards and make it more readable and usable in the game. That's a big benefit. I like that being integrated into character creation. It means that you can create a character very swiftly. And also, if you have the demo play and stuff, you can make it even more swiftly. You can say, right, we're going to play Daggerheart in 5 minutes. You go, okay, cool. I only need 2 minutes to actually make the character, and maybe 3 minutes to kind of consider who my character is beyond that. So character creation is very fun, very simple, if you have the resources at hand. If not, you're going to have to spend a lot more time prepping, a lot more time looking stuff up, and a lot more maybe printing off the SRD and just having quite bare bones stuff to work with. But, you know, it's not impossible, but it can be a bit fiddly as well if you're playing online without like all the stuff with demi playing. It means that people either have to live in a sort of limited experience or an online experience that you have to pay for. So, with that in mind, character creation, very much enjoy. I like the talk of the classes and the domain cards. Of course, these are all things that we're aware with because of D&D. And then we have experiences, which are stranger to some people. Instead of a big list of skills to choose from, there are nothing. There's just an open like an open venue for you to basically go, right, what are your experiences that you've had so far in order to get to where you are today? For example, were you a merchant? Were you a bodyguard? You could put down those two things as your experiences and say, yep, merchant. Anytime you want to barter, you want to talk to traders, you could say, hey, merchant, this comes in handy. If you want to know the ways, all these sort of trade routes, perfect. I can use my experience in being a merchant to leverage that experience. That's cool. However, the suggestions that it give are varied. And I think this is obviously going to be very opinionated from myself and anyone that touches it. If someone says experiences are great because of X, Y, and Z, and someone says experiences are weird because of X, Y, and Z, those two answers will probably be the same answers, but the reason why they don't like them and do like them are the same. I think the best way to describe it would be to just give you an example. There we go. Step 7. We've glossed over a few steps here. You know, the sort of base details, class, ancestry, which comes into your heritage, all this stuff. But step 7 is your experiences, and it says, I'm not going to read it verbatim because you can just buy the book or you can get the SRD, and of course, it would be kind of weird of me to just read the entire book off in a video. So I'm just going to cover it quickly. Basically, as I've explained already, sorry, I can't speak. Experiences, you can leverage your experience to add a bonus to your roll by spending a hope to do so. So you can't do on every single thing. So it's not like a skill where on every single thing that you do, you can add that mechanical bonus. But the GM can go, oh, you're a merchant. You used to be a merchant. Well, I'm not even going to make you roll. You just know this. That's an example of how it could be used. But the examples that they give, I find, are both puzzling and really funny. For example, as I said before, one that can be quite easy to grasp is assassin. Perfect. I know what an assassin is. They kill people, they sneak, they disguise, that kind of stuff. So if your action comes under the purview of assassin, then yes, you can be assassin. But then it says chef to the royal family. Okay, so knowledge of nobles, cooking, all very fun. Yeah, you can use that. Let's find a more weird one. Here's one. Fake it till you make it. What does that mean? Like, these are, for example, well, to be fair, this is mentioned in the phrases. These suggestions that it gives are backgrounds, characteristics, specialties, skills, and phrases. And the phrases are more open. You can put a phrase in, and the phrases, for example, are, as I said, fake it till you make it, first time's a charm, hold the line, I won't let you down. Now, from those that I've just read off there, I won't let you down. Okay, I can imagine how it's going to be used. Yeah, we have, like, a character who is in danger. I need to protect them. That kind of thing. Hold the line. Literally a big defensive thing. As a guardian, that would be perfect to use. First time's the charm? What does that mean? Does that mean that, like, the first time you try something, you can just get a bonus? Does that mean you're inexperienced? Because that'd be weird. Inexperiences. But what does it mean by first time's the charm? Surely that could be used for a lot of things, and that's the purposes of experiences. Now, what it says to narrow it down, it says good at fighting is way too broad. You can't just be like, I'm going to use my leverage of experience. Oh, well, what's your experience? I'm great at fighting. Well, we're in combat, so whatever you do, you could use an experience to do so. So it wants you to avoid that, but it says first time's a charm. But the first time you try anything, couldn't you leverage that? That seems pretty broad. And of course, fake it till you make it. Fake what? Couldn't you like, oh, are you good at this thing? Asks one player. Yes, I am. I'm going to use my fake it till you make it experience to gain a +2, even though I could be attempting anything. These things, I think those are too broad. And is it unfair to say that, like, right, let me pick 2 out of this big list and say these don't work? But let's move on from the likes of experiences. I think one thing that people will definitely enjoy as they open up the book and see the likes of this spread, is of course your character is made up of a couple of things. But when you look at a character sheet, it's not just attacking your eyes. There's not a list of like all this stuff to worry about. And one thing that I will say, it's very refreshing to go into a game and not have to tell someone if they're writing a physical character sheet, hey, you have your skills, you have your abilities. Those two things are separate. And when you have a skill, they're the same number as the ability. Oh, okay, well, why have skills? Because if you are proficient in a skill, you get to add your proficiency bonus. Oh, what's my proficiency bonus? Oh, it's +2. Why is it +2? Why isn't it like +1? I'm only level 1. Because it is. Okay, so it's +2 at level 1, so it's at +3 at level 2? No. Oh, when's it getting a +3? Level 5. Why? I don't know. Just is. So it's very fun, then, to look at the character creation stuff and say, hey, choose what bonuses you want. +2, +1, +1, +0, +0, -1. Put those in the 6 things, you get 2 experiences. Those give you a +2 when you use a hope. But apart from that, just make a roll. Choose what you're going to do and go for it. That sort of play feels very much in the sort of rules light stuff that I enjoy. It's more brought back. It doesn't involve all this extra little stuff in character creation in order to get there. You don't have this big long list of admin in order to get to, oh, I have a +7 to my attack. Instead, it's just, hey, you have a +2, you put it in there, and unless one of these cards says it, you're probably going to be just rolling these 2 dice, 2 quite big dice, the D12s, to get a number from 2 to 24, big range, and adding something like a +1. And the steps from getting to that point are very simple. I've been reading the likes of the Mork board games, and it's not too dissimilar from that. In fact, as I've done in my own games as well, having the characters choose what their bonuses are rather than having them roll for it and taking out that block of time and having to do all the math, and it does make things more streamlined. So I like that a lot. But they'll also like the fact that if you look at a typical, sort of character sheet, if you look at the equipment of your character, you won't be absolutely swamped by the stuff that you get put in your backpack at the level 1 of something like D&D, for example. Hey, you have torches, spears, javelins, tinderboxes, bedrolls, but all this stuff. That's very much cut down in Daggerheart. For example, if you go on I almost said Daggerplane then. If you go on Demiplane, they'll say, hey, choose your weapons. You get 2 choices. And the list is this big, and what's actually good about the pick of your weapon is that the weapons actually matter what they do. You're not just sat there sat through reams of weapons, interesting choice of words, in order to get to, I deal a d6 of damage. Instead, each weapon, each piece of armor, each piece of equipment has something to actually mull over and look at. But even then, it gives you suggested tools to use. You have only 2 weapons. It gives you some other stuff, as an adventurer to use, rather than saying, okay, what's your equipment, what's your background, what's your class? None of that. Just, hey, you're an adventurer. You get to choose. You want a minor health potion, a stamina potion, and that's it. Maybe you get like a little totem or a mark or something that you get for your class, that kind of thing. Your choice, but all the stuff is quite cut down. There's not a huge swath of stuff to remember, or have in your character sheet, or track in terms of uses, or how many arrows I've used. That stuff, it's all just shrunk down to focus on the play of the game, to allow you to have rules to play a story. I like that sort of stuff a lot. There's a simplicity to a lot of these things, and one thing that I find quite fun, I think, when I look at it, is it's literally just one section on the character sheet, and that is the top right on the second page, which is character description. It asks you, choose one or more from the list of stuff. Your clothes are, and then says, always moving, flamboyant, inconspicuous, layered, ornate, light, and gives you some suggestions on what your appearance might be, what your traits might be, how you might look to other people. That, as opposed to making it up, is very fun. I like the sort of, like, just... it's like an ad-lib, that's it. I like the ad-lib sort of style to all these things. It gives you suggestions for you to fill in things that you would actually ask yourself, or should ask yourself in character creation, rather than just, what's your Bond's ideals, flaws, and opinions on political politics, that sort of stuff. So I appreciate that. Also, I'm just going to include it here because, I mentioned art, but I'm going to show you some art. The art in the interior of this book is lovely. I like the style that they went with. The artist that they have got on board for the cards look lovely, and the interior art is wonderful for the pieces that you see. I like the very clean look of everything. I will say, though, having the book and looking at the pages is a much better experience than looking at the PDF and seeing the very small writing when you look at the page. Reading it, like so, is much more nice, in my opinion. And to look at the art and the interior and the presentation, it's all very clean. You won't be sat there looking through just walls of text to go through. Everything's separated with big old bold icons to see what everything is. Every page is a joy to look at. It's got a very clean style. I think I've said that previously, but it's got a very clean presentation and art style. Everything that you go through, there's just something nice to look at. Yeah, I can't complain about the art. I think some people... I mentioned it in a previous video when it came to the art of the new D&D books that came out. Someone said that they didn't like how they looked, even though I said, I think the art looks great. I love the art pieces for the monster book, for example. I like the change from the parchment paper sort of page look to the very clean off-white. I think that all looks very nice and clean, very easy on the eyes to look at, rather than like going for this rustic aesthetic and sticking to it, even at the detriment to a person's reading ability. I like that a lot. So I like the cleanliness present in every page of this book. Actually, this isn't a criticism, but it is funny just to mention. So, when you have something like D&D, Pathfinder, whatever you're playing, it has your background. What were you before you got to this place of being a level 1 adventurer? When you were a level 0 adventurer, what were you? Were you an assassin? Were you a criminal? Were you a merchant? Were you a gigolo? What that kind of stuff it includes in the rules. Meanwhile, in Daggerheart it says, hey, what's your community? And your community, of course, is what sort of life did you have before? Not what career did you have, because that would be quite minute. Instead it says, hey, what sort of community were you with? Were you out in the cold? Were you out amidst the plains? Were you a survival? Were you amidst the high-class colleges? Were you very much ingrained in politics and noble sort of stuff? Well, if that's your sort of bent, you can pick amongst the communities, where there are 9. I think there are 9 communities. Yes, there are. And the communities, I will try to read them quite quickly. Highborn, Lawborn, Orderborn, Ridgeborn, Seaborn, Slyborn, Underborn, Wildborn, Wonderborn, and Jasonborn. Yeah, I remember I showed a friend all the communities, and they were like, why are they all saying born? Why is all of them born? None of these are words, but you know what they mean. That's what I like about it, though. I like that I can say, I'm an underborn guardian, and someone says, oh, underborn, so you were born underground? It's like, no, that was the community. It was an underborn community. Oh, what's the other ones? Slyborn. That is 100% the funniest one of all of them. It just sounds really funny to say, I'm a Slyborn. That makes it sound a lot less intimidating in my eyes. What are you? I'm a Slyborn assassin. Say Slyborn again, it makes me laugh. I don't know. Yeah. So, I like the communities. The naming convention of it is quite funny. the art involved. I like the sort of well, it's got to focus on giving you the tools to make your own world. So I like that when you open the book, it shows some lovely art, but also some pencil drawing sort of art to sort of depict this idea that, hey, this is what it might look like, and we've depicted it to inspire you. But at the end of the day, here is a picture of some rocks with holes in, because these people in the Ridgeborn live like this, and that could be your world, but you can make whatever you like. This sort of pencil sketch style sort of inspires a person to say, oh, I can do this. I can fill in the colours of these sort of pencil drawings. Oh, these person sketched it out. I can sketch it out in story terms, that sort of thing. What does Seaborn mean to me, the creator? I like that sort of vibe. And I do like that the descriptions do kind of just give you everything without restricting you at all. And just putting it out there to anyone who would ever care to ask me the question, my favourite is Wonderborn. My favourite is Wonderborn, without a doubt. I love the whole idea of being like nomadic tribes and what have you. Not because of that reason specifically, but the ability that you get from being a Wonderborn is my favourite. And the reason it's my favourite is because it's pretty much a mechanic that I put into one of my games that I'm making in progress. Sanctum and Blaster, both of them have an ability called Deep Pockets, which you get from being someone who is an outer worlder of some kind. And as a result, you can just dip into your pocket, pull out an item, and you can do that once per session, or like once per... I can't remember what the time duration is for the ones I put down, but yeah. So you can pull out whatever you need, and it's at the GM's discretion if you say, we need a ladder. And just pull one out if the GM says it's okay. That sort of thing. And that's basically what is in here. You have Nomadic Pack, where you can add a pack to your inventory, and once per session you can spend a hope to reach into the pack and pull out something useful that would, that you request. Because apparently your big backpack full of just stuff just has enough stuff to be useful in this situation, which I like that as a mechanic. And actually that's something to mention. The mechanics present, I've already said millions of times at this point that it gives you the tools for you to make your own world and to make it however you like. I do like the approach of giving you a bunch of like fun abilities that can be used for in combat, out of combat, purely for narrative sort of bonus and benefit, but also the mechanics behind them. It's so simple. You're not looking at something like the Wildborn and seeing, oh, how does the ability for Wildborn work? And it's just a ream of abilities and like listings, what have you. It's just a single line. It doesn't say, here's the flavour for it. It's not like a spell in D&D where it's like, you do this and this and this, and then the damage happens. It's not like that. It says, hey, you want to cast this spell? You do this, you make the roll, and this happens, but the GM and you at the table get to explore how that looks, what that looks like, because it's not a game that restricts you on where the space is where everyone is on the battlefield. It's not a game that restricts, no, it's this and this. You can only do X and Y because it's really sort of open. You can kind of go with it. And that's the case with a lot of these things. What background, sorry. What origin, what is it even called? What community are you? I'm a lawborn. That means I'm well read. And the ability is you have advantage on rolls that involve history, culture, politics, and prominent person or place. Interesting. I can use that. Probably use that. It's fun. At no point does it say, from your inclusion into the college of... It's just, you. You tell me how this works. And I believe you can do that because you were a creative and wonderful person playing this game, and we want to build a story. So here you go. Here's an ability that works very well, tells you how it works, but I don't need to tell you why it works. You can do that. And I like that sort of approach. The next section of the book, beyond character creation, is of course the sort of mechanics of the game, the whole mechanics of Daggerheart. And I do have to say, I much appreciate a game that goes, hey, here's the mechanics of the game. We're not going to sit here and try and give you everything, or try and give you an absolute massive amount of stuff to remember and have to use, when really, you just need this to play the game. I much prefer that. I much prefer games that I've saw in the past where it gives you the base mechanics at the front end of the book before anything else. Then the rest of the book is just all the fun flavour and options that we can do and play. That's a cool time. I like that much more than, here's an entire DM's guide for every edition of the game a solo book to just tell you how this game works, including literally everything, especially the stuff that you will never ever use, except that one time in session 28 when you need to suddenly remember how X, Y, and Z works. So, when Daggerheart has a quite small core mechanic sort of section, I much prefer that, even if I think some part of the rules are overwritten in some areas. There are some parts that feel are quite long-winded when it could have covered what this meant in like much less words. That's not to say that they're trying to fill the page count. I feel like they use the page count quite efficiently, but yeah. To highlight some specific mechanics that I kind of love and don't like. And this might be interesting considering the videos I've put out in the past. You know what? Let's just start with the one that I mean. Gold. Your wealth. Now, when it comes to things like D&D, Pathfinder, any game that you want to go for, even the likes of Morkborg, where it says you have this much silver, stuff costs this much, go with it. Even though that's a rules-like game, it still has the individual counting of your money. D&D has this, and you might expect that in a game that goes for more, a complex approach. It has all these different kinds of monies. You have copper, silver, gold, electrum, platinum, that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, this just has gold that you spend, you use on certain things. And I've said in the past, in a video about other ways to manage wealth, how this approach that is in Daggerheart is really cool. Except, since putting that video out ages ago, and thinking on it some more, I do have to agree with the commenters that told me that this approach is less preferable to them. And let's just come out with it. Right, gold, how it works in this game. There's 3 kinds of wealth. There is handfuls of gold, bags of gold, and chests of gold. In the first sort of iteration that they showed to the public when it came to how gold works, it was you have like a number of boxes that you tick, until at the end it was like you have a hoard of money in your sort of total wealth as a character. Now, what benefit this has is you don't have to track money. You can just go into a place, spend a handful of gold, and boom, you buy the thing that you want. Cool. What does it mean, though, in terms of gameplay? It means you have to walk into a shop and say, "Hello there, shopkeeper. I would like to buy this thing that you're telling me about." Cool. That'll be amount of gold. How much? Oh, it's amount of gold. Okay. Meanwhile, in D&D, it's okay, cool. How much is this bucket? Oh, it costs this much copper. Great. Pay it. Boom. I have this much left. When it's a handful bags and chest system, I used to think it was really cool because it meant I didn't have to track money, but I now realise that tracking money is incredibly simple. Because guess what? If I have 10 gold and this costs 5 gold, I can buy it. And I'll have 5 gold left. And you might say that, oh, well, all the different types of currency make it more complex. That I agree with. Games that have a sort of wealth mechanic, well, my games, I can tell you, Blaster has units and bits. Meanwhile, Sanctum has gold and copper. There isn't copper, silver, gold, where 10 equals that, 10 equals that. It's just, you know how dollars and cents work? You know how pounds and pence work? Where it's like 100 of that means 1 of this? I do the same thing. I try to mimic what we'd have in our world because that just makes sense to me. Rather than, let's have these things as the 1 pence or the 1 cent, this thing as the 10 pence coin, and this one as the 1 pound coin, even though that's not how the sort of currency works. Normally, like 1 gold is like what? Like 100 pounds, I guess, if you try to convert it. If 2 copper is a cup of ale. I don't know. Anyway, but yes, gold. When you look at the gold and it says handful, bag, and chest, and you walk into somewhere and you have an abstracted transaction for a non-abstracted transaction, like, hello, I'd like to buy some gunpowder. My name is Percy, the gunslinger from Critical Role, who's trying to buy gunpowder and pellets to put into my guns to use in the rest of the episodes of Critical Role. And in that campaign, one of the more memorable NPCs was Victor the Black Powder Merchant. You can see how, as a GM, you have a lot of opportunity to create some very cool situations from inside a shop. It's not something that, you know, a player should walk into and go, I'd like to buy X off a menu of items. Cool. You walk out after spending a handful of money. I think that having money in your bag and actually counting it is actually a lot more simple, and abstracting money can make it harder to sort of get your head around. Whenever we try to abstract a concept that can be explained with numerical value, I feel like it can go the opposite way. It doesn't make it simpler, it makes it harder to explain. Because how do I explain that, I walk into a place and I spend a handful of gold, and that leaves me with another handful of gold? And does that mean every single merchant I come across says the price of this item is a handful of gold? Or do you have to change your language as a person and as an NPC to express the fact that, no, this doesn't cost 5 gold, it costs a handful of gold? This society that these people live in the Daggerheart games, where, no, we don't consider the individual amount of gold, we just close our eyes, dip our hands into our pocket, grab a handful of gold, and that's how much gold I give you. Like, yeah, I think it's an odd abstraction that I don't think, you know, works. I used to think it was fantastic, but in practice, there are certain things that I've tried to abstract that I feel actually abstracting this makes it kind of weird. Makes it really weird to explain to a player. So, with that being said, I think abstracting of gold is the thing that I'm not really a fan of in Daggerheart. But I'm not sure either whether I would like to incorporate a numerical money system. But at the end of the day, it'd be very easy to do, I think, just to look at the stuff and go, this would probably cost this much and this much, instead of just, this costs a handful of gold. But yes, I think that abstraction is strange, but, you know, if you have a look at the other rules, what ones do I like? On the very next page, I love the death mechanic. I love that you have 3 options. I've seen this in other games as well, where there's options of how you die or how you perish. I very much like the idea of, yes, it's fun to see 3 options, but in both Blaster and Sanctum that I'm making, I do like the sort of approach that I'm going with, which is when you reach 0 hit points, you don't die. You are dying. And when you're dying, that means that you are in this sort of Boromir moment where you are showing the effect of dying because your rolls are worse and your movement is worse and you're not having a good time as you fight. But you can spend that time in order to get into cover by using your movement to run into cover, or you can still attack. You can still fight on. You can be like, I don't care if I'm going to die in 3 attacks time, I'm going to kill this guy, even if it kills me. This heroic sort of last stand sort of idea, I like that a lot. Meanwhile, if you look at these sort of death mechanics that are here, they are cool. And to go over them real quick, we have Blaze of Glory, which means you get to take one last action and then die. And that last action is a critical, so you can kind of make this sort of epic final moment. But, you know, it's at the GM's discretion. And the question is, if someone's going to die, would I, as the GM, say, yes, your attack just kills them and just, they're dead? Or like something like monumental happens because a player died? Or would you have to try and tailor it to how the player died? Like, if there was a player that just didn't care about the mechanics, was taking risks and just went for it, nah, I don't care about this game, would the GM then have to go, okay, let's make you an epic death with the Blaze of Glory because you chose that one? Or would I just say, yeah, you attack them, you do a normal critical hit, and you die. You know what I mean? The next one is Avoid Death, which is you go unconscious. You're incapacitated until later, and when you wake up, interestingly, you lose a maximum hope slot. And you have 6 of them, so when you go down, you choose that option, you can go, yep, I survived the fight. But I only have 5 hope that I can gain as a maximum now. And if you keep doing that, that means your hope slots will go down and down until you have 1. And if you do it again, you are dead. So you can keep fighting, but as you do, you will literally lose hope. You'll become a withered shell of your former character until you die. I like that option as well. I like that sort of inclusion in the narrative. And of course, the last one, Risk It All, where you basically just take 2d12s, roll them, and If the fear die is higher, you die. If the hope die is higher, you succeed. So it's a 50-50, which actually I prefer a lot more. I prefer the fact that, oh, my character, when I die, I'm on equal footing as the rest of you as to whether I live or die, as opposed to, hey, my barbarian not only has a shit ton of hit points and will survive until the end, but then when I get knocked down, I'll probably get back up again because my con bonus is plus 12, that kind of thing. So, having every character be on the same playing field and it just being a 50-50, a toss of a coin, I kind of like that for the live and die sort of approach. And it says to roll 2d12s if the hope die and fear die, but you could just flip a coin because it's 2d12s, you roll them and go for it. So, yeah, those three options. Go out to Blades of Glory, survive but weaken yourself, or just leave it up to fate. I do like that it has the options for players, even if I do have my own approach in my games. I like the idea of going, right, you've been knocked down to 0 hit points, what do? Are you going to leave it up to the dice? Because I will tell you, the first time I did this, because I say the first time I did this, I read it and went, oh, I picked up my dice and just rolled them, and of course, the fear die came out on top, and I was like, oh, cool, I would have died. I would have died immediately from that first roll. Then the next one, I succeeded. It really is just a 50-50. So those mechanics, I think, are quite fun. These sort of, which is interesting, because those mechanics are quite abstract. We have one that says, hey, you survive until the end of the fight. What happens in between then? So I go down, I'm incapacitated, and the enemies just don't go, oh, bang, bat, and kill me when I'm down? Huh, okay. Then Blades of Glory. I make one final move. What if I'm not within range of anyone? What if I'm a melee character, and the enemy's over there, and they shoot me with a long-range thing, and I have one action left, and I can't get there? So what do I do then? So it's an abstracted idea that achieves a narrative goal, which I think it does very well. I like the approach that it does. Meanwhile, I don't like the abstraction of gold, but at the end of the day, that's completely opinionated and will probably be the opinion of some people. Meanwhile, those that pick up Daggerheart will go, oh my god, I love the gold mechanic. Meanwhile, I'll be like, yep, it's a bag of gold for that thing, yeah. That sort of thing. Also, you'll find a whole spread in the book talking about combat wheelchairs, and this is always a lovely discussion online, and by lovely I mean it's absolutely god-awful when you try to bring up the conversation surrounding whether characters in fantasy or any game should have a wheelchair, and whether you should play a wheelchair having character in a game that has combat, because surely they wouldn't succeed unless they had a combat wheelchair, or unless you were a GM that thought, hey, you are wheelchair bound in real life. Wouldn't it be cool if you had the fantasy in this fantasy game of being combat effective? Well, here you go. Here's a whole swath of options for you, and they're really cool options. They basically replace a lot of the a lot of the armor sort of like approach to it. They even have damage. You have heavy frame models that deal damage when you use them. So I think that's quite fun. Also, it does speak loudly. This is something I thought of when I first looked at the book, without even picking up this version. It speaks quite loudly as to what sort of game that the Darrington Press people are trying to make, when at level 1, you can pick up, for example, a battle axe, a whip, that kind of thing. And these will be weapons. You have short bows, long bows, you even have shields. Then, you also have a swath of magical weapons at level 1. So the gaining of magic items doesn't really feel that impactful later, unless a magic item was to do something absolutely crazy to differentiate itself from the base magic weapon. But while I say that, it's purely just to get people access to magical damage for free, because there's only 2 types of damage, and that is physical and magical. There's no fire, ice, etc., that kind of thing. And it's interesting that at level 1, of course, you can get just magical items, but they are just base magic items. So it does speak loudly as to that sort of world building. It's like, hey, this game is not set in something like the old medieval times. Or if it is, this old medieval times that you are set in, where people are living in like houses made out of straw and poo, that kind of thing, it's apparently got enough magic resources in order to hand out magical weapons to adventurers here, there, and everywhere. So that's an interesting approach to the world building. Meanwhile, they say the rest of it, though, you can make it up yourself. That's not me getting snarky or being weird with it. I think it's interesting, but also speaks quite loudly as their intentions that, yeah, magical items can just be given at level 1. Initiative in this does not work like the likes of D&D or other games that have a set initiative system. When you go from the first turn in combat to the end, it's probably likely that, some enemies, some players in a round will probably not get to go because there isn't really an appreciation of rounds that refresh. Instead, it's just a case of, right, someone acts, then they act again, then they act again, but if you roll with fear, then the enemy gets to act, and there is like an action tracker token system and cards that you use to track who's acted and that kind of thing, and it can result in some confusion at the table as to who has acted, who has not acted, and besides that, where everyone is. There's a few cards that include things like you would target all creatures within far range. Fair one. That I can work out because it pretty much is going to cover basically everyone. Meanwhile, there's one, I can't remember what it's called, but there's one card that says you can move everyone that is this range into this range. It says like you can move everyone into far to basically bunch them together, which I found interesting because it's like, oh, you want to give people a card to bunch people together when there isn't a battle map? So now you've said there's a bunch of them together so that you can use a big area of effect spell, except what areas are we talking about? There's no set limits, really. There's just, you target these creatures in range, but there's no shapes, there's nothing to depict where on the battlefield things are. It just says, yeah, you bunch them together, which I feel like all these things together is going to cause confusion. I mean, I said before in another game, I can't remember which one it was, regarding initiative, where when it's not set, when you don't have a set initiative, it can be quite hard. That was it. Goblin Quest. Goblin Quest, an incredibly simple game by, who was it? Mark Howard? No. It's on... Grant Howard? Yes, Grant Howard. Yes, Grant Howard made Eat the Reich. That's why I pulled up Eat the Reich and not Goblin Quest. In that, you could have a game that features 2, 3, even just a bit more players, and in the phase of the game, there's no initiative, there's no combat, but when you play the game, everyone gets to act once. Then once you've all acted, then the round refreshes, if that makes sense. But you don't have a set initiative. Instead, a player goes, I'm going to do this, and they jump in. Then once they act, you could, turn over a card. You could just say, I've acted, and that's it. And then once everyone's acted, then everyone can then jump in again whenever they want, because we've all had a turn. Even in that game, where there's no battle maps, no weird abilities, it's literally just, am I good at these 2 things? And if so, I get to add another dice to my dice roll when you're rolling 2d6. It's an incredibly simple rules-like game, like meant for just silly funness. Even in that really basic rules-like game, tracking who had went and who was yet to act in this round, all like in that was not. It was kind of hard because in the midst of friends just being fun, having fun, like having a chat and maybe breaking away from the immediate tasks at hand in order to talk about something else. When all that happens, when you're friends at a table, you lose track. So having abstracted ranges and quite a few ranges to worry about when it comes to like abstracted ranges. It's not just like, they're either in melee, they're kind of over there, or they're really far away. Once it goes beyond that, and you have things like adjacent, very close, close, nearby, far, very far. When you have those, there's a lot of ranges to worry about, and I need to consider that those guys over there, there, and then this card wants me to bring them all together and bunch them up when I didn't know where they were before. It can create some sort of confusion that you really have to try and have everyone band together and try to remember. But then when you do that, you have players interpreting what you've said wrong, and it's a whole heap of confusion that I'm sure devilishly smart viewers hearing me say this thinking I'm a fucking idiot for saying it will probably be able to overcome in their own ways. So with that said, I think the combat is... I think that particular thing might be a problem at the tables I know, I think of, because we like quite hard and fast rules that set, yes, I go this turn because it's written down and I've went now before, so I'm going to go now again, and I know where this person is because I can see them on the battle map, or I know this person is because the GM said that they're over there and I can probably get to over there, and I'm not considering 6 ranges to work with. It's much more simple. To compare, when I say about all these ranges, you might think, well, what are you going to do? As opposed to that, if you want abstracted ranges, what's the alternative? What, are you going to have nothing? You're going to say to the players, just figure it out. The person's over there, and you can probably get there. We'll just work it out at the table, and these rules you spent all this money on, we didn't do anything. There's no ranges. There's no things to worry about. So what's the alternative? Well, I think the one that people very much consider as like the pièce de résistance, fuck that is, the best when it comes to ranges that are abstracted, it might have to be ICRPG or Index Card RPG, where the ranges in that for combat is just adjacent, nearby, far, and too far. What that means is I can either hit someone in melee. If they're nearby, I need to move and then hit them in melee, or if they're far, I'll have to spend my entire turn moving over there. Think of it like I have 2 actions on my turn. If they're there, then I can just spend my action to hit them. If they're over here, I need to use a movement to get there, and I can attack with my other action. But if they're over there, I need to spend both them in order to get there, if that makes sense. And if they're too far away, then maybe if you move far, then the GM will then update you. Okay, now that you've moved far, he's then within range at that point. There's only 3, and technically 4, but that's out of range to really worry about. There, and there. Not there, and there. Like, yeah. So I think that aspect might cause some confusion at tables. It definitely will at mine, and I look forward to all the rambling arguments about, no, I was next to the guy, why is he over there? Because he moved, Darren. Right, anyway. Now, as I get to the page about adversaries, and there is a whole host of adversaries to look at, I have to mention, of course, this very prominent feature of Daggerheart. Of course, talked about the fact that there's all these rules, so you can make whatever you want, but I like the fact that I've told you about character creation, how to play the game, and the monsters. You only see 1 book here. This is a massive, massive preference for me. I love when you can get a game like Daggerheart, like Break, like Vassan, like like Dragonbane, like Cyborg, Pirateborg, all these different games where you can just go, right, I picked up the book, I can now play the game, as opposed to, right, I've bought this book. Now I need to wait for the other 2 books in order to play the game, and in order to get all those games together, I'm probably going to have to spend around either £90 to £120 in order to get all these different books, or you can just get 1 and you can play the entire game from this. The adversaries, you can get through all the adversaries in a bunch of pages, and there's a bunch of stat blocks, and the stat blocks just have what you need to run them, so you can make up why they're here. As I've said, I love that kind of thing. I can just look at this and go, oh cool, and a cave ogre, I'm going to decide where he came from, what's his name, what he likes to eat, why he's here, that kind of stuff. For myself, I don't need you to sit there and go, a cave troll is a corrupt species that comes from the birth child of this god after it corrupted this creature. And of course, as I've said, that is preferable to some people's playstyle, but I very much like the idea that I can just pick up this page and go, oh cool, there is 10 stat blocks on this page right now, on this spread of pages, 10 of them, 10 stat blocks. That means the section on adversaries can fit into a book, and all of Daggerheart is within this book. I love it. I love that feature. I definitely want more games to do that, and you know, there'll be some people that say, well, some games need another book. Like, for example, Draw Steel needed to have the player book and the monster book. Fair enough. It was very comprehensive on both those fronts. Fantastic. They managed to get everything you need for that and everything you need for that. Grand. Meanwhile, D&D, players, GM book and the monster book. They managed to get everything that you need to play the game in here, even if you think that there's less of the game, there's less of a game, in here than there is in those other games. You know what? If you think that, fair enough, because that's the intention behind Daggerheart. It's not a sprawling system that you have to trawl through. It's a system of rules to use to make your own game. Inside this book, you can find 5 settings. And I've said before that this book doesn't have settings. It technically does. It has 5 of them. To those that don't know, when I say there's 5 settings, I of course mean that there are 5 campaign frames is the name. Campaign frames, sort of inspirations in order to get you into the game and, you know, to make your own session and make your own world. You don't need to go and buy an entire source book in order to play the game, or you don't need to make your own adventure from scratch, or at least the idea from scratch. You can go in here and there are some very cool inspirations as to what your next campaign might be. And I think I can sort of highlight the best one with a bit of a flick through the pages. The campaign frames, at least I won't say them all, I don't think. I'll give you the sort of best ones in my opinion. There is the Witherwild, which I won't go through too much. 5 Banners Burning, which is your sort of political intrigue campaign. Beast Feast, which is very much inspired. I mean, if you didn't get by the name, by the likes of Delicious and Dungeon, Monster Hunter World, that kind of stuff. Where is it? The Age of Umbra, which of course, if you know of Critical Role, you'll definitely know Age of Umbra because they played it. They played their own campaign of it. Motherboard, which is deeply interesting, and probably my favourite one would have to be, if I can find it, Colossus of the Drylands, which has a complexity rating of 4. Now that I look at this, like compared to the other ones which have like 1, 2, 3, even the political intrigue one was only complexity 2, but apparently this one's complexity 4. Anyway, so the sort of vibe with these 5 campaign frames are different in every way. We have ones that focus on political intrigue, as I say. My favourite one, Colossus of the Drylands, that one is inspired by the sort of Western tones I very much like in anything. Whenever there's a Western tone, I'm like, this is awesome. I love this sort of stuff. There's even inclusions of how to include guns in your game when you choose that campaign frame. There's mechanics for it, and there's mechanics for fighting Colossi, because the other inspiration, with its name being Colossus of the Drylands, is Shadow of the Colossus, a fantastic game and a fantastic way to include it, which is to write parts of the body of the Colossus in question onto index cards, and to then fight individual pieces and choose what part of the monster you're going to attack. All very fun, which I very much like as a little gimmick to include in the game. Again, I'm looking at the likes of playing online, playing in person. You don't have to be a bit more creative with trying to implement that in a online play, but you could do it very easily, I imagine. In the genuine fear that my brain is actually dying because I can't speak, I've cut out a lot of this video because I just kept rambling. It was all just a bit weird and I couldn't speak or gather my thoughts. I must be tired or I must be in need of something else. As you can probably... Yeah, there we go. There's another example. My brain is dying. Let's move away from the book and try to talk about the aspect in the book, because you could always pick the book up yourself. You could go with what I've said and see if that fits your vibe to decide whether or not you want to pick this up. But let's talk about the cards, and let's look at the cards, because I've not looked at the cards in person, and I'm excited to see if they are up to the hype. They're probably up to the hype. Our little card sleeve there. How do I open this? Don't you hide your secrets from me, you little minx. There we go. So we have a... How do I... Wait. Oh god, I'm not gonna break this, am I? How do I get it? Is it not? Oh, it's magnetized. Okay, cool. Oh. Well, that was an ordeal. Now I have to say, as I pick up one of these packs to look at it, there must have been so much money put into the art in this book. I mean, if you look at the book and you look at the cards, you'll sometimes see a piece of art that'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen that one before on a card. But if you think about it, 276 cards. And if you think about how much it must have costed for one piece of art, like let's lowball it and say $400, right? If a single piece of art is $400, which that is probably a low price for it, and you have 276 cards, that's a lot of art that was made, which again, it was made for the book and the cards, but even still, that's a lot of money that went into these. So, that's not me complaining at all, by the way. That's just me saying that if you were wondering whether this game is indeed, as it says in the ad reel material, it's like a lavishly created and wonderful presentation, that's definitely the case. They've definitely put a lot of money and love into this product, so you can pick it up and just drool all the art in these cards. And they really are nice cards. So, let's actually open a pack. Oh, why do you do this? How do I get into this pack? First of all, you made me sit and wait for me to get back into stock because it was so damn popular, and now you make me... Ah, there we go, I've opened it. No more complaining. I love you now. I love you again. Love you, Matt. Love you, Matt. We have our cards, playing card size, what have you. Beautiful. I want to check something as well, by the way. Oh my god, that is fun. So, whenever I saw people online having their own cards and just waving them in my face, being like, I've got the book, you don't. Which is what everyone who posts Daggerheart meant. They said, F you, Ellis, and you wanted to pick up this book for yourself. Anyway, when I look at the cards, of course you'll have a lovely ability card like this, which I'm not going to sit there and review every single card or show you the camera, but you can pick it up yourself. You'll find, of course, the abilities, what it does, the recall cost, what kind, like what domain card it is, because there's domain cards, subclass cards, ancestry cards, community cards, all these different cards that you can get. All the details for what it is, whether it's a spell, will all be on there, and the lovely piece of art. But what I didn't realise was that not only is the front like that, but the back will also have the lovely piece of art, which is, depicting the fear and hope sort of arrangement of Daggerheart. But what you'll see from this one, it looks like some crossed swords, because that is the Born. Yeah, Born. Yes, Born. The Born domain card theme. Meanwhile, if I go a bit further into the list, you'll see that on the back of this one, there's a book. And that's because this is the Codex domain cards. I didn't realise that not only the front, but also the back of each card has its own unique way to telegraph what the card is. That's really cool. Now, what I do wonder is, of course, this is a lovely and quite handy sort of gimmick for our TTRPG of Daggerheart, going, okay, we're going to make our characters, choose all these domain cards and put them down. We have our vault and we have all that we can do present on these cards. We can pick them up, look at them. I do wonder if you might run into a problem if you have players who are playing similar characters and they need to have the same cards. Because at that point you'd have to go, right, well, you're either going to have to share, you're either going to have to write down what it does, which is kind of why we want the cards, we don't have to do that, or print them out. So, yeah, that's assuming that you are the one person who spent money and all your friends just leech off you as you buy the thing and they have to get the cards from your pack and not buy it themselves. But yeah, anyway. I realised as I sniff these cards, I just sniffed some cards because I want to get that new product smell, and just totally forgot for a second that there was a camera. I mean, what more is there to say? They're really nice, well-made cards. They're easy to read. You can pull them up, just play them on the table. Everything that you need is present. They're all arranged very nicely. They're very clear. The art, of course, is very nice. The actual, the paper, and there's no artifacting. It looks to be well printed. Whoever they got to print it has done a very good job. Because that's always the feel when you have, again, as I mentioned, on both cards and in the book, there are these pieces of art blown up, and of course you have to condense them and make them into small cards. And if you go for them to fit on small cards, and that means when you blow them up into pieces in the book, then that means that you have a piece of art that's been stretched too much and all that kind of stuff. But it looks like the cards themselves are indeed lavishly presented in visually and mechanical sense. Everything is clear so nothing gets in the way. I kind of do want to run a session in person. I think I've interested a group that I play with in person to play Daggerheart or give it a go. And it would be quite interesting to see how that actually goes down. Because there's a lot of, the whole reason this is a great mechanic or great gimmick is that, of course, it means that character creation is super simple. I don't need to look into a book, figure out what my character does, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to do any of that. I can just pick up the cards and just, I pick this one. That's what I can do. And look a bit further, I pick this one. That's what I can do. So with that gimmick in place, I'd love to see how it works. I'd love to see if it works. And when I say it works, I mean, does it actually make things simpler? Will people pick up the cards and go, oh yes, cool, and actually have a simpler time with it? I imagine if you're level 1 and you're picking between 6 cards in order to make your character, yeah, it'll probably be simple. As opposed to, in the book it says, if you're gonna start at a later level, then it might be a bit complex. I think throwing someone in the deep end might be a bit harder, like going, oh, we're level like 6, for example, which means that you have the 2 from level 1, but then every time you level up as well, and you have to include all the things on your sheet to make yourself level up in all the different armor slots, and the hit points are increased and the stress, but if you did that, it'd be a bit more complex. But at the end of the day, me saying a high level character is more complex, especially if you start in the middle of character creation, is something we all know and love if we play D&D, because if your character dies midway through a campaign, you have to start all over again with a character that's level 15 and have to get used to all the things it can do. So yeah, this is nothing new. But I would love to see, as I say, whether the whole hello, I have cards does actually make things more digestible and easy for people to play with. I guess I'll report back on that. This is the thing with me looking at this on a preliminary scale. I've not had the game very long. I've looked at a lot of the playtest material. I've read the PDF since I actually bought it, and once it's now delivered, you've literally watched me on this video, me open it and look at all the cards and books and look at it physically with my own eyes on paper page, that kind of thing. But I'd love to run it with some groups, run some sessions of it, look at it a bit more, and then make like a full video explaining it in a bit more detail maybe, or explaining it like my thoughts afterwards. I think my preliminary thoughts is about as useful to someone who's looking for an in-depth approach to a game as someone who's looked at the front cover of a book and said, yes, this is a great book. So with that in mind, I don't have much else to talk about, so I think I'm going to leave it there before I start babbling and drooling all over the place. So, final words. If you like your TTRPG of choice to be a game where you can pick it up, look through the rules, and basically just make up the rest, Daggerheart is your game of choice. If you like a game that has more an inclusion of setting, a more appreciation of crunch, or even a more rules-like game that doesn't consider things like evasion and armor slots and that kind of thing, then you probably won't like Daggerheart. But I still think it's worth your time if you have money to spare to pick up the physical book. But if not, you can pick up all the things that I've talked about on the SRD for Daggerheart, on the Critical Role and Darrington Press websites, that sort of thing. If you want to just have a look at it before you get the physical version, and you can still play it with those versions before you even get this, which costed some money to buy. But if you like wonderfully presented, lovely art in your game, like book of choice, with enough rules to get you off from no game to making your own game, then you'll like Daggerheart. There are plenty of prompts to help you get started. There are campaign frames to help GMs get into the game very quickly and sort of base their game on these existing frames. And there's multiple of them, so you can make a choice. You can take one and just build on that, or you can maybe mix them together. Maybe you could just take the title. You might be inspired by the title of the Colossus of the Dry Lands and go, oh, I have my own idea. And there's all these inspirations, resources, tables, rules, cards, all these things to use and build a story at the table rather than just paying someone to write a bunch of stuff for the setting. But again, that might be your bag. It entirely depends on what you want, and that's kind of the whole thing about Daggerheart. Whatever you want, you can do with Daggerheart, because it has enough rules to do so. And uniquely, when I say that it gives you enough stuff to make your own game, I think it's a rare instance of when I say that, and I don't think the person behind the product is saying, you can make your own game, because we have these rules that we've give you, but we basically had you pay for really sort of basic sort of stuff. This is an entirely new system composed of a lot of great mechanics borrowed, inspired, and built upon from other games into a unique system that you will like to delve into, change yourself, adapt however you like, and you'll still enjoy the game that you make, even if it's not entirely thought out in every single direction to make a very streamlined experience. It's a game where people who are actors, who love to make and world build, and love to make characters of any kind with sort of like low-level prompt and low-level restriction, you will love this sort of game. And if that's not your sort of bag, then don't buy it. Don't hate on it. You'll like Daggerheart if you like it, if you like that sort of thing. And if not, then stick to the games that you love, which are also fantastic. I think this is a good buy. I'm going to enjoy probably running this, I hope, I'll report back again with a full video, I think. I like the mechanics that they've chosen in certain areas. They very much match what I like to do in my games, or at least my systems that I'm making as well, so I can't say that I dislike this or this because it's what I'm doing, which inevitably, because I'm talking about this now, I'll say it here. Just because I've said that a mechanic in here was a bit weird, I don't hate it. And also, if I sit here and say I like this mechanic, that doesn't then mean that I am copying from Daggerheart if something sounds similar in my system, because chances are, as I mentioned with the deep pockets thing, or the death mechanics, whatever, sometimes you make a mechanic and it turns out a book is published with that mechanic in it, or a similar mechanic, and that's just because there's some great minds behind that, and there's a great mind locked behind all the weirdness in my skull and sleep deprivedness. Anyway, so with that being said, I'm going to turn off the camera before I ramble anymore. Have a good day. Enjoy Daggerheart if you have it. Look into it if you don't have it. And whatever you're playing tomorrow, your weekend, your time for game night, enjoy it. And I love you all. And I'll see you next time.